All right, so some variable factors might be spread across the industry. Some specific factors might be in a particular industry, right? So it's a little different than what we were talking about before. So in the bread industry, we need land. In the steel industry, we need capital. And those are our specific factors, but labor can move between industries. And if we have this be our, as we open up for trade, if we have a comparative advantage in steel, then benefits are going to accrue to capital, right, the specific factor. It'll also accrue to labor potentially in the short run if it's an abundant factor. And over time, we'll be able to move between the two sectors anyway. So we'll have less of a longer run effect for labor. Okay. So that's the concept. So let's look at some data from Mexico. So these are exports by the United States to Mexico. So we are exporting what as you look at that list? What does that stuff entail? If we try to pick it apart by resource, what do you think those industries represent? And then we've got the growth factors here. So 1994 to 2008, a pretty long run. Chemicals and plastics went up 446%. Is that an emerging export or a declining export? Big time emerging, right? And what do you think about chemicals, plastic? I know we don't know these categories, but what can you imagine? What type of things are going into that industry? Technology. Highly skilled labor, right? You start to see some of the things we were talking about with the items in here. Electrical machineries, at least some capital related goods. All right. Here is exports by Mexico to the U.S. So petro, pretty big change there, right? Now, what's kind of interesting here, was this on the other list? Yeah. So what does that mean? I thought Ricardo told us, specialize in what you're good at, trade for the other thing you're not. So now we've got that in both spots.
For one, you got a really broad category, so you could be doing like incomplete to complete or something.
Okay. Yes, and that's part of the story anyway, as we are going, now look at, we're doing 22.5 billion exports by the United States to Mexico, 22.5. They are exporting to us, in other words, we're importing 32. Okay, so who's doing the value add? Who's doing the last value add? They are, right? So we're sending something down to them, but then maybe they're adding it back on and we're bringing it back to us. What kind of stuff do you think they're doing down there before it comes back up to us? Assembly, right? Or some sort of labor intensive, probably unskilled, labor intensive type of good. So we can start here with maybe some basic parts, send them down there, have them assembled by hand. Some of that stuff even the latest computers can't quite do as good as fingers can do, and then send it back up. Or it might be more costly at this point in time to have a machine do it compared to sending it across the border to have hands do it. All right, so we got that intra-industry trade thing that we're starting to see a bit. Okay, I think, well, totally get into this, but let's look at this for a sec. If we think about production in a rich country versus a poor country, right? So let's call Mexico poor, because relatively speaking, the data shows that they are, right? On a per person basis. Poor country, rich country, on average. US, Mexico. How do things get started in terms of the product cycle? So where do we have things getting developed? In the United States or in like the early stages of figuring out an innovation? Does that happen in the United States or in Mexico? United States. Okay. So we start to put it together, right? So in the early phases, then we start to get it standardized, right? So we kind of had this aha, we've done our test markets, we figured out that there's a demand for it, we start to build our business, and now we start to become more standardized in the production of it. So that instead of using really highly skilled people, we might be able to start to use more lower skilled people using specialization and repetition and all the stuff that we've been good at over the years, right? And so now we can maybe start to shift that production to a different place. And so this is the life cycle of products. And so we got our high income, low income, and for our high-income country, our production looks like this. We develop it here, we figure things out, might start to go, but then eventually we start to standardize it in its product cycle. The more standardized we make it, we start to ship it off, and so our production and consumption is flip-flopped. We like the product right away through test markets in the early phases of it, right? So our consumption of the good goes up. But where we get it from is not necessarily ourselves. The production possibilities frontier would allow us to do it, but it's better to keep our consumption high and buy it from China, right? So we're thinking about US consumption versus US production, and as we move through time, through the product cycle, we might see a pattern like that develop. All right, we'll pick up there next time.
Which chapters are going to be on the first exam?
Good question. Didn't I have a date? What'd you say, January?
No.
Which
First test, Wednesday, February 8th.
Which is not in 2014.
yeah, these were the dates that, that was a mistake. But that's, in fact, I think I hand edited this. I might have printed off a new syllabus. I think I edited this on a different one already. I'll get back to you. It's around that time. I mean, that's roughly the schedule of the exams, but those dates are off. Yeah, that was from 2 years.
The next couple weeks.
That was 2 years ago. Yeah, in the next few weeks. Yep.